Season 3 of the War Within is bringing us one brand new dungeon, and it's not just a filler. Ecodome Aldani is set in the twisted remnant of Koresh, packed with devourers, corrupted biomes, and some cool unique mechanics. In this video, we're diving into the 3 bosses of Ecodome Aldani. Like I mentioned before, we've got some cool unique mechanics in this dungeon, so I wanted to give an overview of each boss and show you how to do them. Let's start off with the first boss, Azhiccar. This fight sets the tone for the whole dungeon. It's fast-paced, it's ad-heavy, and punishing if you let mechanics slip through the cracks. The boss itself isn't too complicated. The name of the game here is ad control and avoiding devour at all costs. Azhiccar summons waves of frenzied might with invading shriek. These little guys are your top priority. They'll jump around and try to engorge players, leeching health and stacking damage buffs on themselves. Stack up and AoE them down fast. Some good tools to control these in pugs where people may not be the quickest to stack is Binding Shot, Vortex from Druids, Ring of Frost may hold them in place. You can Ring of Peace yourself if you don't want them to hit you, but you want to hit them, so only do it as a I'm gonna die, maybe I got hit by something else, and I don't want to take a leap. But ideally, you're stacking together and you're killing them as quickly as possible, you're rooting them in place, and you're keeping them contained. These jump very similarly to the mobs in Theater of Pain in the Undead Wing, where they jump out and they jump to somebody else, and it makes it very difficult for melee to deal with them. So if you can tuck in, even if you're range, it's going to make life a lot easier. If you ignore them, they can stack up both in quantity and the damage buff they get from each leap and become a real problem, especially going into the next phase, because you're not going to want to have mites up. So at 100 energy, Azhiccar casts Devour. He'll start pulling everything toward him for 18 seconds, dealing heavy shadow damage every second to the party, so healers be aware of that. If he manages to consume a player or a mite, he triggers Feast, healing 5% of his health and gaining 15% increased damage, and it stacks for every creature eaten. It also stuns and just melts whoever gets caught, so don't even get close. I tapped it on my rogue and got absolutely obliterated. Tanks can kinda survive it, but it does do a lot of damage. It's very unnecessary to tap if you're a tank, so stay away, don't get pulled in. Now here's the play: you spread out, you use your movement abilities to counter the pull, and make sure all the ads are dead that are up before Devour starts, because he summons ads during Devour and they are going to be pulled into him, so you want to make sure you don't have any previous ads up going into that phase, and kill the summoned ads very quickly before they get feasted on. Now, there's a couple of other abilities happening throughout this fight. Healers, watch out for Toxic Regurgitation. It hits players with a pretty heavy dot and drops a big pool of digestive spittle. If you stand in the pool, you'll burn for big damage and it'll slow your movement down. Now, one thing to mention is that it burns and slows players and creatures, meaning mites that are being pulled into Azhiccar will be slowed and burned as well if they are hit by these pools. Now for melee, I think there's little you can do to really game this, because if they're in the pool, you would kind of have to be in the pool to hit them. So it's not ideal for melee, but you may be able to knock them back into the pool, have that slow on them for a little bit before they leap again, let them take some damage, and let the pools do most of the work while you cleave them down and focus the boss a little bit. I think range can game this a little more by positioning a little bit behind the pools, because you are being pulled in, so you don't want to be right on the edge. But if you're a little behind a pool, when a mite leaps to you, it's immediately going to be pulled into the pool and slowed. So you know that when you get a mite leaping on you, you know the next couple seconds of it, it's taking damage, it's slowed, it's easy to blast, and it seems like a good position. Now you are fighting the current of his pull, so the priority is simply killing them before they reach them. So don't try to do anything fancy, but if you can position behind a pool, I think it is beneficial for range to do that. The dungeon's only been out for a little bit. We'll have to see it a little bit more and see how practical it is, but I think that's something you can do in this fight. Now tanks. Azhiccar has a fervent strike. If no one's in melee range, he'll thrash, dealing massive damage to the whole group. So someone needs to be in melee range the whole time, and that you want that someone to be your tank. So the quick too long did not read or did not listen is stack up for mites, cleave them down when you're not in the Devour phase, kill every ad before the Devour phase, run away during the Devour phase, and do not get eaten. Don't stand in digestive spittle, and always keep someone in melee range to avoid thrash. If you manage the ads and don't feed the boss, he goes down pretty easily, but if you get sloppy, his feast stacks, he starts hitting really hard. Play it smart, and you're on to the next fight. Next boss in the Ecodome of Aldani is Taah'bat and technically A'wazj. I don't know if I'm pronouncing them right. That's how I'm going to say them. Let me know if I'm wrong. This fight's got two distinct phases, and it's all about positioning, movement, and smart cooldown usage, because there is a phase where he is immune. Sending a cooldown right before that's very bad. The first ability we're going to touch on is Binding Javelin. Two players get targeted, they get this big circle around them, and when it's finished, a javelin will slam into the ground and tether anyone nearby, slowing and doing stacking arcane damage until these things are killed. So the trick is you want to drop them right near their boss so the melee can cleave them down. You don't want to run off to Narnia with them. You're wasting damage. Yeah, I was doing some 12s earlier and they were just dying very quickly. So put them where you can cleave them and they'll disappear. At 100 energy, phase 2 begins, Arcane Blitz. A'wazj disappears and Taah'bat becomes incorporeal, reducing all damage taken by 99%. This is why you want to kind of know when it's happening so you don't send cooldowns right before this. Meanwhile, the boss fires off Arcane Overload, which is dealing heavy AoE damage every second. So healers, this is where your cooldowns are going to be important. The only way to stop this is to hit Taah'bat with Warp Strikes. These are targeted lines fired by A'wazj through marked players. When they hit Taah'bat, they strip off stacks of Incorporeal. So aim your lines through the boss line of sight style. You want to go on the other side of him so that the attack is going through the boss and taking off a stack of Incorporeal. Once all the stacks are gone, the bosses get destabilized, both of them, stunning them both for 15 seconds. This is your 2 target burn window, so unload everything you've got. Although there isn't a damage amp in this phase, you're dealing uninterrupted 2 target cleave damage for 15 seconds, which can be huge for some classes. You repeat this until the boss is dead. Now let's talk about a few abilities happening throughout the fight. First, tanks. Taah'bat hits with Rift Claws and hits hard. It's a heavy magical hit followed by a bleed hit. So it's magical damage and it's physical damage. So be ready to use defensives or just call for an external if needed. You'll also be able to kind of help with Warp Strike with good positioning in phase 2. So be aware of that too. Try to position them in a decent spot. I know I talked about Binding Javelin as a mechanic, but I want to mention that it does ramp fairly fast. So healers, you should be ready to spend some CDs when you see those circles coming out. Too long didn't listen strategy. Drop Binding Javelin near the boss, cleave them down fast. At 100 energy, line up Warp Strikes through Taah'bat to break the shield. Burn hard during Destabilize, the 2 target stunned phase. Watch for heavy AoE damage during Arcane Overload. Once you get the rhythm of the 2 phases, the fight's actually a lot of fun. Clean execution makes the boss a lot easier. The final boss of Echo Dome Aldani is Soul Scribe, and this one might trip anyone up who isn't on point with mechanics. They are generally simple and straightforward, but they need to be done quickly. The main mechanic of this fight is Whispers of Fate. When it goes off, the boss spawns a clone of each player, and they are marked with a purple arrow above their head. You've got just a few seconds to run to your clone and pick it up. Sounds easy. If you grab yours in time, you get Fate Bound, which is a 10% damage and healing buff for 10 seconds and it stacks. Now if you fail it, the boss kills your clone, you get Wounded Fate, a nasty dot and a 30% haste reduction for 8 seconds, which is very bad. So bottom line, pick up your clone, no excuses, that's the main part of the fight. Now let's talk about the mechanics you're dealing with while you're trying to get your clones. It ramps up a bit more as these mechanics layer in. So the first clone related mechanic you have to deal with is he will spawn your clones in a circle around him, and then he will throw daggers at every clone. You need to find yours, run over, just run through it, pick up your clone, and then you're good to go. You got your buff, you can start fighting. Now the next one you're going to have to deal with, everybody will get a circle around them that deals arcane damage when it explodes. So you want to find your clone. Again, it's got the clone with the arrow above your head. You need to run through it, pick up your clone, and then get safe. Now it's a little hectic with everybody running for their clone because circles are going all over the place. Get your clone, get safe, and try not to grief the group. At 100 energy, Soul Scribe will cast Eternal Weave. It's a 24-second ritual with cone attacks that blast across the room, kind of the frontal bactal that we saw in the gas monster in Theater of Pain. You know how he would shoot that gas in front and behind him? It's the same concept, except it's across the whole room. And you have 3 clones that you need to get, and you need to get them quickly because if one of those frontal or bactals hits the clone, you're going to get debuffed. So it's kind of counterintuitive because most of the time it's get out of things. But in this, if your clone's going to get hit, you want to get your clone and get out as quick as possible. So ideally, you go to the clone that's in danger first and you go there fast. So you need to just acknowledge that, okay, if this clone has 1 or 2 more ticks before he's in the cone, okay, I'm gonna go to this guy instead. So it's not hard or it's not complicated. It's just a lot of quick thinking because you do need to move fast. So basically you pop up, Get the clone that's in danger first and then start going to the other ones. Make sure you're not greeting here. You want to get your clones fast because there's multiple. So if you're letting clones get killed by the boss, you're going to deal with minus 30% haste for longer than 8 seconds, which is already bad. It's kind of a full group test because if somebody does let their clones go off, they're going to do severely less damage, especially if it's somebody who's heavy haste. It's really going to sting. So make sure you're grabbing your clones. Now, a couple of things to note. Tanks, if your clone dies, you get affected by Wounded Fate, so don't assume you're exempt. During Eternal Weave, stay mobile and like I mentioned, help bait the cone patterns cleanly. Healers, save some major CDs for Eternal Weave and be ready to triage anyone who misses a clone because it does hit you with a nasty dot. Also, be ready. There's consistent ticking damage throughout the fight. Now, DPS is very, very important. I want you to listen. I want you to turn your ears on and hear me. You get a buff from doing the mechanics. The buff equals more damage. Mechanics equal more damage. Do the mechanics. All right, guys, hope you liked the video. We'll be going into trash and routing in another video once it's more fleshed out. There's some tuning changes for the mob damage and we have a better overall understanding of the dungeon. I think there's a lot that's going to be going up and down, but boss mechanics will likely stay generally the same, so I wanted to make this video first. Until next time, guys.